everyone, and welcome. We're going to have a great evening tonight. My name is Jake Allgeir. I'm a professor in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. I study how to use fish pee to try to grow more fish. And tonight I will be introducing Professor Karen Alofs. She's a new professor with us here in SEAS. She studies freshwater ecology of fishes, and she likes to enjoy her casual evenings gardening. She has a particular penchant apparently for growing tomatillos, and her favorite food is the best variety of the worst fruit, papaya, and pears. And she tonight will be talking to you all about food, fish, and climate change.
Thanks for the introduction, Jake, and for the invitation to be here tonight. I'm excited to talk to you about what we do in my lab, why it's important, and how it relates to food. So many of us relate to fish in very different ways, and these really reflect the ways in which fishes are important and the services that they provide to us. And for individuals, these services may be things like food or job security. For society, these may be increased recreational opportunities like angling. And fishes are often the first indicators of environmental hazards and have been shown to be a very green food source when you think about resource use efficiency and energy use efficiency. So more than 90% of global inland, or what I'm talking about here is freshwater capture fisheries, production is used as food for humans. And roughly 60 million people rely upon fish for their livelihoods. And more than half of these people are women. And capture fisheries have three different natures. So commercial fisheries, recreational fisheries, and subsistence fisheries. And just as examples of these, here in the state of Michigan, commercially licensed fishing boats report nearly 7 million pounds of catch annually. Recreational angling in the Great Lakes generates nearly $1.5 billion of annual income. And inland fisheries are increasingly important as food and nutritional resources, particularly in rural economies. So together, inland fisheries and inland aquaculture represent over 40% of the world's reported fish catch or production. And this 40% comes from less than 0.01% of the water that is on the earth that's available to fishes in rivers, streams, and other freshwater environments. It's important to note that this is reported catch, because there was a recent study just this year that got some news coverage that suggested that based on household surveys of consumption, there's really a hidden harvest of freshwater catches. And this hidden harvest is likely to represent that, and freshwater fish harvest is likely to be 65% higher than reported. And this 65% is mostly concentrated in low-income countries and is the equivalent in animal protein, annual consumption of animal protein for 36.9 million people. And it's unreported. So before moving to Michigan in January, my recent work has focused on the impacts of climate warming on lakefish communities in the province of Ontario. And we know that there's been significant warming across the globe over the last century, and much of this warming has occurred at high northern latitudes. And the region around the Great Lakes has been projected to warm 50% more than the global average over the next century. So Ontario is a really interesting place to study the impacts of climate change because it spans the northern range boundaries of many cool and warm water adapted fishes and the southern range boundaries of many cold water adapted fishes. And as climate warms, it's been predicted that the northern range boundaries of warm water adapted fishes will expand further north. And so what I'm showing you here are two maps of Ontario and how the thermally suitable habitat for smallmouth bass is expected to expand across the province by 2050. So in my recent work, I've used historical and recent data from the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and the Royal Ontario Museum in order to show that that lake fish communities are already changing, and that warm water adapted fish species are already establishing in lakes farther north than they previously did, lakes which were previously too cold. Many of these species are also here in Michigan lakes, including largemouth bass, rock bass, and smallmouth bass. I've also shown that the spread of these predatory fishes has increased local extinctions of small prey fish and desirable sport fish like brook trout. And here, south of the border, trends over the last 25 years suggest that highly prized walleye, which is both economically and culturally important, is declining while bass populations are increasing. And this may represent increased competition or predation between walleye, which is adapted to cooler waters, and bass, which is adapted to warmer waters. And this leads us to a number of questions that we hope to address in my lab. What explains declines in cold and cool water fishes? Is it just climate or also species interactions? What are the implications for fisheries? Is food from fishes resilient? And how can we manage fish communities sustainably into the future? Thank you.